Brahmacha lokadipati sahampati Katanjali anadivarang ayachata Sandita sata parajaka jatika Desetu dhammang anukampimang pujang.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. There are times in life where we experience worries, fears, anxieties. Some of these worries and fears are irrational. Some of them are actually rational. But either way, there is a wise way to deal with fear. There's a wise way. Now, some of the fears that the Buddha talked about, some of the things that could happen in the future, which is wise to consider, is the lack of security. Now, there are foolish ways to approach a lack of security in the future as well. Whether it's financial security, health, these are things that we worry about. But the security that the Buddha was referring to goes much deeper than that. As long as we haven't attained the first level of enlightenment, one of the levels of enlightenment, then the future is insecure. So how do we deal with a rational fear? This is something that even the Buddha said, well, this is a danger. Now we don't want to deny the danger. We don't want to live in denial, because that's not very helpful. But we don't want to live in fear as well. We don't want to live motivated by worry, motivated by fear. That's a real shame. Thinking of the future, worrying about the future, all the things that could go wrong, and that, even if that habit, that subtle habit is in our mind, it directs our life and it drains our life of joy. So what's a wise way to deal with even the dangers that the Buddha talked about, the dangers that we should consider? Even if fears are irrational, doesn't really help that much to try to convince oneself they're irrational. But if you bring your awareness into your body and really feel, you really feel the physical sensations, the effects of that mental state, then you can help to relax on the physical level. Maybe you notice tightness in the gut, maybe you notice in the shoulders, other places in the body. Regularly doing that, helping the body to relax, because the body and mind are interrelated, then the fears will tend to relax as well. So this helps to create new habits. But the fears that might come from recognizing that our future is insecure, how do we deal with that? The Buddha gives us a very clear way to deal with it, right? The whole path of practice, everything that he talks about is a way of overcoming any tendency to live in fear. Now, if we practice, for example, the path, generosity, morality, loving kindness and compassion, continuity of mindfulness, investigation based on samadhi. These are things that will give us the best option for the future. Life, every single day, is filled with opportunities for making good karma. There's just no end to the opportunities that we have every day to make good karma. And we all need as much good karma as we can get. So look at something very simple like generosity. Pali we call it dana. So this doesn't just refer to giving material things to other people. This can also refer to giving one's time, giving one's attention. These are valuable things as well. In the modern world, time is so valuable. Being able to give time to someone who needs a kind word. Being able to give time to children, give time to parents. This is a renunciation. This is sometimes takes an effort. And you don't have to do huge things, right? If you have the ability to feed thousands of hungry people, then that's wonderful. If you have the ability to build monasteries, that's wonderful. But very recently, in Thailand, I was looking out the window and I noticed a young schoolgirl in a school uniform, and there was this street dog, really bad shape, very thin. And she reached into her lunch bag and brought out some bread for the dog, just feeding the dog. And it was something that was so simple, this act of giving, this act of generosity, and it was so natural. It's like you see a living being in need, and then that little girl was just motivated. I mean, I'm sure she was on her way to school. She had things to do. But just to take that little bit of time, that little bit of time, reach into a bag and offer a bit of food to the dog. A very small gesture, but but very beautiful, right? And so much of our the results of our generosity, the results of our support and helping, is based on our intention, how clear our intention is. There are many times that we do things throughout the day where we're helping other people. We're helping people with our family, we're helping people at work, we may help strangers. But then really giving ourselves credit for that, paying close attention when we do that. Monastic life is filled with opportunities for helping, especially as a junior monk in the Ajahn Chah tradition. Every day in monastic life, there's just so much that we do to help the senior monks, to help everyone in the monastery. Help them with their robes, clean the senior monks' huts. Comes back from alms round, we wash their feet. Right. And it's not based on whether we like or respect someone, right? Some great teachers, they come back from alms round, going alms round barefoot through the village, come back, feet are dirty, have a little foot bath. Some teachers is like, oh, it feels like such an honor to wash the feet of this teacher. But then there's other senior monks, you think, oh, maybe he's not so wise. Why should I wash his feet? But that perception limits our mind. And then just to be able to do that with an equal amount of dedication and sincerity. Whether we respect and like somebody or we don't respect and like somebody, simply because this is another human being, and this is an opportunity to help somebody else out, even if it's just a small gesture. The size of the gesture is not the key element. It's one element, but the intention. If we overcome the inclination just to guard our time, my time, my things, my everything that we identify with, and overcome that, even in small ways, just to be able to give something wholeheartedly. Give time, give attention, give effort, give help. And then even if we do many things throughout the day, even with the proper attitude, sometimes we're so busy that we don't really give ourselves credit. Time goes by and we're helping here and helping there, and then we don't really reflect on how good that is. And so that's also an aspect of receiving the benefits, living the benefits of helping others. So if you have a clear intention, then we're very mindful why we do something to help somebody else out, and then afterwards reflect on that. As a novice, I got into the habit of, before I went to sleep at night, I would reflect, think back. Were there any times that I could have helped somebody else out throughout the day? But I decided not to. Maybe I was too lazy. Maybe I decided to, just to skip it. The habits just to say, oh, I'd rather not do it, or just the inclination, just the not being able to raise the energy and enthusiasm to be able to do something. So I would reflect. Were there any times that I didn't do that I could improve upon? I think, okay, yeah, maybe there was that one time where I could have helped, and I decided, no, I'm not feeling too lazy to do it. But maybe tomorrow I could. And then gradually giving becomes an ingrained habit. But then reflecting on all the times that we do help other people. Reflect, that's the great majority of throughout the day, times where I helped that person, or I helped that family member, I did this, I brought them here, gave them a ride, offered them advice. And then when we reflect on that, the natural result of that is it brings joy. Right? And this is an actual meditation technique called Chaganusati. While we reflect on the times that we've been generous and helpful and giving, not with the idea that, oh, I'm so wonderful because think of all the times that I help people throughout the day. It's not for that. That doesn't really. That's not the natural result. If we look at it and we see, yeah, actually, we give ourselves credit for helping this person and making the sacrifice of time and effort. Because even if we're very generous and helpful, if we don't give ourselves credit for it, then the benefit is not really sinking in. And the benefit, the natural result of being generous is that we feel a sense of joy. And this is how we can concretely overcome fear. The emotion of fear and the emotion of joy cannot coexist. So when we're feeling inspired, when we're feeling joyous over the good things that we've done, when we derive a wholesome sense of self-respect based on what we've done, the natural result is that it starts to bring happiness. course, having a standard of morality that we try to uphold, very important. 5 precepts, of course, is the standard we recommend for people. It's actually very profound. Even if everyone in the world just kept the first precept, the world would be transformed. And there are many people who are very dedicated, and they, most of the time, will keep 5 precepts. Or they keep 2, 3, 4. But again, at the end of the day, reflect back. Reflect back on how that's affected our life. The times where we decided not to kill the insect, and we took that extra time just to gather a spider on a piece of paper and take it out, right? The times where we would have been able to justify lying or twisting the truth, but we decided, no, I'm actually just going to be 100% truthful here. Right? So then again, at the end of the day, we can reflect back. Before you go to bed, reflect on our level of sila throughout the day and the benefits that come from that. If it just becomes a habit, even if it's a good habit, then we don't derive the maximum benefit possible. So reflecting on our sila, recognizing, well, yes, this is actually quite worthy of respect. Anybody living by 5 precepts, or of respect for life, or respect for truth, respect for clarity, everything the 5 precepts are encouraging. We may respect that in other people, but somehow when it comes to ourselves, we think, oh, no. So it is helpful to consciously bring to mind the goodness that we've done, the goodness that we live in our lives. And what's the natural result of that? Again, a sense of wholesome self-esteem, a sense of joy, happiness, feeling good about life, and knowing that whatever is going to happen in the future, which is out of our control, then at least by doing as much goodness as possible, we are creating the causes for positive results in the future. So these are things we can do every day. These are very practical things. Every day there's innumerable opportunities for developing dana and sila. And then when you walk down the street and you see this person, that person, you think, oh, perceptions arise, this person looks likable, this person not so much. Maybe this person well-dressed, looks like well-to-do, well-educated, handsome or beautiful. They must have it together, right? Or this person looks very likable, very jolly. Some people are frowning, some people scowling, some people look like they don't have their act together at all. And yet these perceptions that we have of other people, which are projected from our own misunderstanding, are very limiting. They limit us. They subtly cause harm to our own heart. Because the reality is, even the people that we see in the street that seem to have their act together the most, when you really look, when you really know people, you realize that everyone has suffering, just like we do, right? Everybody. And sometimes intense suffering that we don't see on the surface. Right? So that helps to break the barrier down, between other people and ourselves. Just like we have suffering sometimes, or fear, anxiety, difficulties in life, physical pain, these people do as well. Even the ones who seem to have it all. And then the people who are maybe not so likable, don't seem to have their act together, in a bad mood, right? Really paying close attention and empathizing with them, you recognize their heart, my heart, really no different, right? Right? And then it starts to break down these limiting barriers between us and other people, and how we view other people, and how we tend to divide people up. And the natural result of that is we start to feel a greater sense of community, greater sense of connection with others, greater sense of liberation within our own heart. As soon as our minds begin to expand, naturally we start to feel a sense of peace and spaciousness. Having limiting perceptions of others, very limiting perceptions of ourselves, locks us into a very narrow worldview. So regularly practicing this, having a sense of goodwill towards other people. Even sometimes the people we see every day, we start to take them for granted. Even the people we like, after a while we start to take them for granted. Yeah? It's natural. So it takes a little effort. It takes a little effort to rise up. And it takes effort to tune in to people's suffering. This is the essence of compassion. It takes effort. It takes a little time. Sometimes it's easier just not to look. We see someone's having a difficult time, but it's easier just to, I don't have time for that. Right? But how much time does it take just to empathize? How much time does it take just to bring up a sense of, I feel your pain. In that way, all human beings are alike. All beings share that. So these are things that we can do practicing every day, every single day, from the time we get up in the morning until the time we go to bed at night. And then we are doing what is necessary to prepare for an uncertain future. And what's the result? We're not bound by fear, we're not bound by anxiety for the future. We start to feel a sense of joyous happiness, knowing that we're doing everything we can. We're doing everything we can possible with our life that we have. Whatever situation we find ourselves in, we're doing everything we can to create the causes for our future well-being. And every day, we develop a continuity of awareness. This quality of mindfulness, which we talk about a lot. Mindfulness, or clear awareness, paying close attention. Right? In everything that we do, it's easy to say, just be mindful all the time, but it's not so easy. So practically, what we can do is to take certain things throughout the day and say, well, I'm going to make this into meditation. I live a busy life. I don't have time to spend hours in meditation. But I do have time to drink. So when we're feeling thirsty and we pick up a cup, how do we do it? Are we scattered? We're looking around, thinking of something else? Distracted on a phone? We do that and we miss so much of life. Now, it doesn't take any longer just to be fully aware. Sensation of thirst, the decision to raise the cup, bringing it to one's lips. sensation of the water in one's mouth, sense of gratification. It's good. I'm actually thirsty. So then, that 30 seconds becomes a little bit of meditation. Right? Or when you brush your teeth, hopefully we all brush our teeth regularly. And so when you brush your teeth, what's happening? Is it just a chore that you have to do and try to get it out of the way? Maybe you're planning what you're going to do that day, or thinking about what happened throughout the day, planning, or some conversations going through your mind. Well, we have to brush our teeth anyways. Why not just meditate? The same principles that we apply, that we use to approach meditation, we can apply that to brushing our teeth. So when we're brushing our teeth, then feel all the sensations of the toothbrush and the brush on the teeth and the gums, and then if a thought arises, say, well, it's merely a thought. And you come back to physical sensations, being in your body, aware of your body. Then another thought comes, you come back. And then it becomes a habit to be present and aware while we're doing something very simple. Maybe we take just a minute, to brush our teeth, a minute to brush our teeth in the morning and the evening. And then, but then during that time, it becomes a habit. And then it becomes more and more normal to be in the present moment. Every time we lift a cup, it's like we remember, let's just take a sip mindfully rather than being distracted. When we brush our teeth, let's just do that mindfully rather than being distracted. And gradually throughout the day we add more and more activities. When we wash, when we do walking, every time we walk from our house to our car, when you're walking through the supermarket, every time we walk, that's an opportunity for paying attention to our feet and touching the ground, being in our bodies, fully in our bodies as we move. When you're at your computer, remember you have a body. At your computer, it's so easy to get drawn into the screen. It's like we get drawn into the content of what we're working on. Sometimes completely losing touch of awareness of our body. So if we spend significant amount of time on computer, then we're going to have to learn how to be mindful while we're using the computer. This is a life activity. So how do we do that? Well, even while we're typing or paying attention or reading or watching, then we can still have a certain percentage of our awareness immersed in our body. The posture of our body, maintaining awareness of sitting. We lose mindfulness, we tend to end up like this. Bring mindfulness back in. So these are practical things we can do every day. And what happens when we develop a continuity of mindfulness, when we're established in our body, and then our moods, our emotions become very clear to us. These things which are driving our lives, the desires, the fears, the motivations. Just because we're not aware of them doesn't mean that they still don't drive our lives. Right? We could be completely distracted, desire arises and then we just follow it. A fear arises and then we just run away from it. Motivation happens and we feel like we have no choice. We're just a slave, blind slave. Someone pushes our button and then we react, living like a robot. So developing a continuity of mindfulness starts to give us a taste of what it's like to feel a sense of freedom. A taste of freedom, a taste of liberation, not living like a blind slave. Thought arises, a mood arises, and then we can use our wisdom to respond. Oh, I have a choice. I can think that if I wish. If I don't want to think that, I can ignore it. Sometimes just being mindful of a thought, it ceases by itself. But even if it doesn't, then we have the choice to follow this desire, that desire. Wisdom starts to kick in. We realize that I don't have to live a life filled or fueled by unquestioned motivations, many of which come from other people, family, society, things that we don't question. If I didn't question why I was doing what I was doing, I never would have ended up as a monk. When we develop a continuity of awareness, the natural result of that is we start to feel more tranquil and serene. The mind, which was scattered and restless and fraught, gradually starts to calm down. And then when we have time in the morning or the evening, whenever we have time to meditate, we sit down. It's like we've been meditating all day already. Then we sit down, the mind has an opportunity to go much more deep. If we just let the mind go wherever it's going to go throughout the whole day, scattered, don't make an effort to be mindful, even if we then sit down to meditate, it's going to take a while for the mind to settle down. So all this momentum of conversations and things that have happened, and right? It's like throughout the day we've just let the floodgates open, and then we sit down and we can't expect the mind's going to very quickly go into a sense of peace. But if we're mindful throughout the day, if we make this effort to be closely aware, in each activity, aware of our body, aware of our mind, moods, thoughts, perceptions, right? This is a full-time activity. And yet it doesn't require spending any more time. It just requires changing our attitude towards the things that we're doing already. And when we do that, then we start to see things much more clearly. We start to see all these things that I've been doing, all these things that I identify with. Why am I doing it? Why am I motivated to do this action? Why am I doing this? What's the purpose? Is it actually leading to the happiness that I assume I'm doing it for? And then we start to see things more clearly. Wisdom starts to grow. If you really want to start to understand, then once the mind becomes more tranquil like this, start questioning what are the things that I identify with. Because this is where the heart of suffering or dukkha, this is the essence of it, the things that we identify with. In Buddhism we call this non-self or anatta. Sometimes people find this difficult to understand, maybe think that it's a very advanced teaching that's at the end of the path. In one sense that's true, but in another sense we can start practicing this contemplation right from the very beginning. What are the things that we identify with as being me? And does it cause any problems? Right? If identification never caused any problems, then it wouldn't be something that we would have to worry about or look at. But when we closely look at identification, when we closely look at many of the times that we're having difficulties in life, then trace it back and say, well, where am I holding on? What am I grasping to? What is it exactly? So we look, for example, at the body. Of course, we identify with our body. Right? my hand, my arm, my leg, of course. But if we really think about it, this body is kind of happening by itself, isn't it? All these bits and pieces, it's only when they're put together in a particular way that we would want to identify with it. But essentially, it's mainly out of our control. There is a certain illusion of control. Very early on, I practiced. For every meditation, I would visually disassemble the body, put it back together again, 3 times. Right? And this directly begins to challenge our perception of who we think we are. We look in the mirror and we think, oh, that's who I am. But we look in the mirror and we think, that's who I am, but what do we see? We only see the first millimeter or so. It's very superficial, literally superficial. It's only skin deep. We see the skin, we see the hair, but there's a reason why the skin, the shape of our body is the way it is, because of everything that's below the skin. Right? Theoretically we know it's there, but generally we don't think about it much. Right? So if we really want to understand ourselves, if we really want to understand identification, then see, okay, I identify with the body and the mind, so let's really take a close look at these. We'll start with the body, take a close look at the body. Investigate all the bits and pieces, take it all apart, and you realize it simply doesn't make sense to identify with something that you can completely take apart. And you say, well, where am I then? And what happens if you visualize taking your skin and hair off? How do we look? Do I want to identify with that? But even if we don't want to identify with it, we still do. So, oh yeah, even if we think we're ugly, we still identify with it. Yeah, sometimes very strongly. And that can be a cause for suffering. If we think we're beautiful, even that can be a cause of suffering because we want to hold on to it. If we think we're ugly, that's certainly a cause for suffering. As the body changes, that can be a real cause for suffering. When we're young, physical change is kind of cool. You get bigger and taller and more full of vital energy. But then at a certain stage, you think, okay, well, I'd like to stop now. But it doesn't stop, it just carries on. And then we tend to perceive ourselves usually maybe 5 to 10 years younger than we actually are. The perception's going to lag behind. So a lot of Dhamma practice is trying to bring our perceptions in line with reality. Gradually, we bring perceptions that are affected by severe delusion, bring them closer and closer in line with reality, so there's more subtle delusion, but more wisdom, more realistic. And then when the body changes, maybe we were once full of energy and we get older and we don't have the same energy, then it's not necessarily a problem. Maybe when we were younger we could do this and that, and we got a lot of attention because of how we looked. We get older, we don't get that anymore. For some people, if there's strong identification, that's a lot of suffering. But if we contemplate right from the beginning how this body is simply a natural process, really not much different than the trees and the grass and the rocks outside. Why is it that we don't identify with the trees and the rocks? It's all elements of nature. But we identify with this. It's like we take this bit of nature and say, this is mine, this is who I am. And if we do that very strongly, then we have noticeable suffering. If we do it more subtly, we have more subtle suffering, but it's still there. It's only when we completely let go of that that we experience a great sense of freedom. an identification with all of our feelings, mental feelings, moods coming and going, but also the sensations of comfort, discomfort, beauty and ugliness, pleasant sound, unpleasant sound, deliciousness, lack of delicious flavor. To what degree do we identify with the senses, always looking to maximize our pleasure from the senses? That's a real burden. Of course, there's a natural inclination towards that which is pleasant. But if this becomes our main motivator in life, we are identified with seeking beautiful sights, pleasant sights, pleasant sounds, comfort in the body, always trying to maximize the pleasure through the senses. That can drive our life. That can be the driving force through our life. And when we're very mindful and contemplating, we realize there's not much difference between a pleasant sensation and an unpleasant sensation. For meditation, they're absolutely equally valid. So all of the time and effort and money that can be spent on getting a particular flavor, I sometimes just laugh. People are like, they get so refined in this particular flavor of food, this particular flavor of wine. So, well, in the end, it doesn't really matter much, does it? It matters to them. But from a meditator's standpoint, this is very limiting. And when we limit ourselves, when we orient ourselves around simply trying to maximize pleasure, then that becomes a real burden in life. Because there's no way that we can only experience pleasure. We generally experience a balance. Sometimes we experience more pleasure, sometimes we experience more discomfort or pain. So then we have to learn how to be fully accepting and approach the discomfort with a wise attitude. Some of our teachers in the forest tradition were very good at that. They would consciously sometimes make us sit meditation for long periods of time, or giving a Dhamma talk for a long period of time, knowing that the listener, after half an hour, 90 minutes, 2 hours, definitely is experiencing a lot of discomfort in the knees and the ankles and the back, and then we start to complain, want to move the body, try to shift, but the only way that you can really make peace with discomfort is by being aware of it, not trying to run away from it, being aware of it, accepting it, and even get interested in it. Notice this relationship we have with discomfort and pain. Even the word pain may bring up a sense of tightening and resisting. But when we experience physical pain, when we're sick, or mental pain, when something happens that is disappointing, we lose something that we love, then investigate, well, what is this thing called pain? Get interested in it. Don't let it control our life. Trying to run away from pain, not liking it, being tense around it. This is all ways that the pain and discomfort or feelings, can control our life, limiting our freedom. So in the end, even if we experience discomfort, we can still simultaneously feel a sense of spaciousness. It's like sati, or mindfulness, becomes so spacious. It's like all around. And then a pleasant sensation arises within that, and we're aware of that. An unpleasant sensation arises within that, and we're aware of that. But neither of the two really shake. Yeah? They don't shake the stability of this awareness. And then this awareness increasingly becomes the place where we orient ourselves towards, as a source of stability and peace and reliability. So then whatever comes through the senses, pleasant, unpleasant, wished for, unwished for, it's all taken in through the spaciousness of awareness. And then investigate how we perceive others, how we perceive ourselves. So much of what we think is our reality is simply a perception that we project out from our understanding, to a huge degree. Right? And then we identify with that. We think that's reality. If I perceive something, then that must be reality. I wouldn't intentionally perceive something in a wrong way. I can see it. I can see it, I can experience it, I can feel it. Right? So that must be the truth. That must be the way it is. But challenge these perceptions. Challenge perceptions we hold of other people. Challenge perceptions of what it means to be successful. Challenge perceptions of how we see ourselves. How do you perceive yourself? Right? We have loads of perceptions around that. And when we identify with them, especially when we identify with them without being aware of that identification, then they control our life. And then looking at all of our intentions, the motivations, the things that drive us to make decisions. This is another aspect of our life that we so strongly identify with. Making decisions in life, having the free will to make a choice. Why is it that we've done what we've done with our life? Well, maybe there was some social pressure, but essentially, we make decisions. Right? That's the idea. We make decisions. Or why is it that you had what you had for breakfast this morning? Or if I tell you to suddenly, without any reason, choose to raise your right hand or your left hand. Right? And so suddenly, or obviously, there is this identification with the choice. I am making a choice. Right? I am the one who chooses to raise my arm or not to raise my arm. So these are places where the sense of self reside, sometimes very strongly, often completely unchallenged. Right? Intentions, motivation, what is driving us to make decision. These things, for the most part, are culturally conditioned from our family, even thoughts or motivations that seem to be new and creative. Really, it's just a conglomeration of things that we've experienced and heard and read. To what extent do we actually have free will to make decisions? And to what extent is this just causally conditioned so that essentially we had to make that decision? So investigating the nature of the body and the mind, until even the most subtle aspect of the mind, the sense of conscious awareness, this also is seen as something that is arising and passing away. That which seems to be a refuge, spacious awareness seems to be our refuge from the vicissitudes of life, vicissitudes of arising and passing away. And yet even that, if identified with, would be a cause of very subtle suffering. So these are things we can do in everyday life, right? Helping, having a good moral standard, opening our heart to other people, developing a continuity of mindfulness, developing meditation to whatever degree we have the time and the energy to have sustained, regular, dedicated practice. And then throughout the whole day, really take a look. What are the things that I take as being me? What are the things that I take as being mine? Sometimes just watch the language. Oh, this is mine. My son, my daughter, my thought, my opinion. All these things that we identify with. And remind yourself, is that who I really am? Remind yourself. That's identification. Identification is limiting. Maybe that's not who I really am. So in this way, Buddhism becomes very practical. It's something that we can practice from the time we get up in the morning, wake up in the morning, notice, am I breathing in or am I breathing out? Then from that point on, right to the end of the day. There's always some way that we can develop good karma, some way that we can develop the Noble Eightfold Path, some way that we can create a foundation in life that will assure us that we've done the best we can, the very best we can for securing our future, and then we don't experience fear. We don't experience fear because we know we've done the best we can. We've utilized the time and effort and the life, the situation that we have to the utmost. So I offer this for your reflection this evening.